You're telling me that wish.com alternator didn't work? Well, hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about the fast-paced, action-packed world of automotive parts. Is a $150 aftermarket alternator with a lifetime warranty better than a $500 O.E.M alternator with a 3-year warranty? We'll discuss that and more on today's episode of Automotive Insight. Let's get to it.
So over the years, even working in the aftermarket parts industry, I used to believe that customers were returning parts because they were guessing and saying there were issues. And after about 10, 15 years, I come to determine that there's a good chance that those parts were actually faulty.
So rather than testing them, we've compiled a actual data in the form of receipts. These are jobs that we've done. We have the records for how many miles the car had, the age of the car when it came in. We replaced it with such and such part in such and such dollars, and on such and such day we had to do it again. That's real world, because that's going out, being in the rain, being in the heat, whatever. That's going to test it way better than anything that we can do in a shop over the course of a day or so. So these are all just our real world experiences with all these parts that we're going to be talking about and examples we're going to give you are all things that we've actually done and can prove that we've had to go back and do at a later date.
Right now, I've got a car still to work on. It's got a wheel bearing noise. Actually, it came in for brake scraping, but while I was driving it, I hear the wheel bearing that I replaced 8 months ago making noise. Then I had another car, the timing belt water pump about 2 years ago, and was in for some other repairs, and I see the water pump leaking.
The Jeep thermostat, we had replaced that 6 months prior, and it had gone bad again. At work, I had a car that had just had a distributor put in it, and the customer it was an old 4Runner, and the customer had been putting a lot of different parts on, or somebody had been putting a lot of parts on it. Brand spanking new distributor, still in the box was still in the car. Chased that thing around for days before we came to the realization that the distributor was bad. Another video in our past is the Focus that we did the wheel bearing on. Is that the one you're talking about, the brakes?
No, that's a different Focus.
If you look closely at that car, you'll see the axle is slinging grease. We replaced that axle how much longer before that
video? It was replaced about 4 or 5 months, but I was doing something else 2 weeks after replacing it, and the boot was leaking already.
So 2 weeks.
And it wasn't cut. It was leaking from the clamp area.
Generally speaking, no matter where you get your part from, it's going to usually work whenever you plug it in or put it on or whatever. What it kind of boils down to is how long does it last? In our experience, aftermarket parts, they don't last anywhere near as long as what the O.E.M ones do. So we're going to talk about how, both as a technician or a service advisor trying to sell this job, give you kind of a breakdown of like what I've found has been the best way to do it over the years. And that's also a good decision for the customer, because if this thing has a lifetime warranty and it's on your personal car and it takes you 15 minutes to do it, who cares? Buy this one with a lifetime warranty for $150 and just do it every couple of years. Like,
if the customer's buying the part and doing the work themselves, or the technician's doing the work, who's going to cover the labor for the multiple repairs? Yeah, it might work right away, but a year from now, who's covering it? You're paying the tech to do it again, or if you do it yourself, that's a lot of your time doing it again. And I'd like to read a review for a part later in the video. I found it quite interesting, and it kind of describes what you're trying to avoid doing this. So I understand that the parts, you have to get them quick, get your car back on the road. But if you have a planned repair, you can take your time, get a better part. and save you some trouble down the road.
If it's something if it's a 4-hour alternator, who's got that kind of time? So a way that I present selling a more expensive part to a customer is pretty simple. Is let's say that the original alternator lasted 10 years and the car has 100,000 miles on it. All right, so you can figure that this thing costs $500 and it's been 10 years, so $50 a year. That's how you can kind of look at it. Aftermarket alternator, generally speaking, you get like 2 or 3 years out of it. So let's say it's 3 years, just so the math is the same. $150 divided by 3 years is $50 a year. So they really cost the same. It's just a matter of how many times are you going to be doing the same job over and over again. So generally speaking, you're going to have kind of 2 different categories. You're going to have O.E.M parts. You're going to have aftermarket parts. O.E.M is what you go to the dealership and buy. Aftermarket is kind of broken down into 3 sections. You have aftermarket like AutoZone, Advanced, O'Reilly's, Napa. They usually have their own kind of branded type stuff. Then they have O.E.M manufacturers. So that's going to be like Delphi, AC Delco, Denso, NGK, stuff like that. And then your O.E.Ms, generally speaking, are going to be built by one of the previous 3 companies, but they'll also say, Toyota, Honda, whatever it is on the thing. Usually on the stickers, there will be the O.E.M part number and then the whatever company makes that part, their part number for the same part. And another thing, you don't have to know basically anything about parts, or that Ford has Motorcraft, or GM has AC Delco, or Toyota uses Denso, or stuff like that. You don't have to really know that. It's going to sound kind of dumb, but it actually works pretty well. Cheap aftermarket parts, the names of the brands they're basically just like focus group tested names that kind of sound automotive-y. So they'll be like Torque Power, or Hyperstop, Duraspark, or I mean, like they just sound weird and made up, like somebody who doesn't know anything
30 magazine clip in half a second.
about cars came up with the name for it. I mean, just stuff like that. Generally speaking, your O.E.M manufacturers, your Denzos, your NGKs, your Motorcraft stuff, that's either going to be named after somebody or is going to have some kind of, I guess Motorcraft sort of fits into this one, but they're just going to kind of be like ambiguous names. And then actual like performance, like racing stuff, is usually based on someone's last name. So it'll be like Borla Exhaust or Megan Racing or something like that. Edelbrock, something like that.
And like through local parts stores, say a Duralast box thermostat, you open it up, it's a Motorrad part. I found a lot of stuff, it could be a Dorman part in their brand. I've had pretty good luck with Dorman stuff. Sometimes hit and miss, but Dorman is actually a pretty good aftermarket company I tend to look for. And I've also found that over the years doing a drivability diagnostic, you replace a sensor and it's still not working and you've used an aftermarket one, there is the chance of, hey, is that part working like it's supposed to? So I've second guessed myself. I've spent hours trying to chase down other issues when I was right the first time. It's just the initial part was faulty. That's one thing to consider is it gives you a little more comfort in your diagnostics going with more of a quality or an OE part.
Yeah, we've both been burned
So
by aftermarket parts. Something that we had replaced 2 months ago or something, and it's got some kind of drivability concern. I mean, matter of fact, zip back 10 or 15 videos on the Jeep that we had. That was an aftermarket part. We totally disregarded it because we put it in. It happens and it sucks. So,
and then potentially that car ended up with head gasket issues, and that could have been created by the thermostat. For defending the aftermarket side of, if you have a 200,000 mile, 20-year-old car, and you're just trying to get another 20, 30,000 miles out of it, a couple years or a year, yeah, I have no problem putting on an aftermarket part. Obviously, they have some super cheap options. I stay away from those just no matter what. But yeah, I wouldn't hesitate to throw on an aftermarket part just to get it down the road until they can decide what to do with the vehicle.
or if you're getting rid of it.
Yeah. So on the budgetary side of things, some aftermarket companies will sell the OE part in their box. This is some recent repairs I've done. It was valve cover gaskets. It was on about 20-year-old Toyota. It's easier to find in about 10 to 20-year-old vehicles. I found like through Napa, some of their Ultra 8, their Ultron brands, I tend to find those were OE. They're usually not in stock, but they can usually get them pretty quickly. And they were actually really reasonably priced. They were actually cheaper than the Felpro brand. And the parts even had the OE number on them. And the same thing with like with some Honda mounts, Beck Arnley brand. They even have the OE part on the part number itself and on the box. So if that goes back to if you know the manufacturer or also being in the industry, you just I've kind of picked up on those tricks to find a cheap OE part.
Yeah. So the internet, it lets you can go on and find original part numbers for anything, and then basically just Google whatever that part number is. And a lot of times, you got to be careful because it'll be like, replaces part number or whatever, but it's not actually that. But like in these cases, the part number is right into the part number of what the aftermarket part number is. So that's one way to kind of skirt around if you don't know who makes something. If you can decipher what the part numbers are in between it, you can do the same thing with if this alternator is made by Denso. You can find what the Denso part number is and search for that, and you might be able to find it rebadged as something else as well. But there are certain things that you can do to try to mitigate as much of the second and third repair attempts on the same issue as you can by doing a little bit of fancy part number searching.
As a warning, counterfeit parts. I have been burned by this. They will look OE. I mean, they'll come in an OE box. The best way to stay away from that is the store, the website. It needs to be a reputable website. Just because everybody else is $200 and they're $50, that's suspicious. So
another great website, even if you don't necessarily buy from them, just as a like a researching tool, Rock Auto. Man, Rock Auto's got tons of different parts. They give you the part numbers, and you can take those part numbers and search for them in other websites and look for them too. A lot of times I've found that Rock Auto actually will be the cheapest, but by the time that you pay for shipping and the fact you got to wait for it for a week or however long it takes, you can usually just steal the part number from Rock Auto, stick it on Amazon, and it'll basically come out to be the same, either because of time or because of the difference with Prime shipping or whatever. If you got Amazon Prime, that's another great resource to use is Rock Auto. No offense, Rock Auto. I mean, I'm trying to talk you up here, but man, you got to step your shipping game up. All right.
I'm all for Rock Auto.
All the
So,
parts your car will live in Rock Auto.
speaking of Rock Auto, they break their stuff down into really good categories. Even a lot of their OE stuff, they put in like a daily driver section, and then even some of the premium stuff. But I found a lot of their stuff in the economy line is the stuff that you get quickly through aftermarket. Um, so as using Rock Autos, I usually stay that helps me to stay away from what am I getting quickly from a local store.
In addition to the fact that they don't last very long, if you get cheap $20 mounts, don't be surprised if you have to hog these alignment holes out. I've had them. It's not uncommon at all that you go to try to put it in, you can get three bolts lined back up, but the other one just under no circumstance is going to line back up. So I've had to go in and take a bigger drill bit and drill this thing out, or slot it a little bit to get the things to line up. Um, they just don't last, and at the end of the day, like with anything, guys, you get what you pay for. I mean, that's just the truth. You get what you pay for. You can't expect, when an original mount, engine mount costs you, $190. Does anybody in their right mind expect a $30 one to be just as good? I mean, just really, like, in what world does that work out in? It just doesn't. They're cheaper for a reason. They're inferior parts. They fit poorly. Most of the time, they love paint. They like painting everything in black, or fake aluminum. Yeah, I just steer away from. Most of the time, I just quote them a price, and it's the O.E.M part. And if they say, "Is there anything I can do, to get the price down?" That's when I'll give them other options, because my time is valuable, as is their time. I mean, everyone's time is valuable. It's the one thing we have a finite amount of time on this planet. I don't want to spend it doing the same crap I've already done.
So I want to read a review for an aftermarket part that really sums up what we try to avoid. And I understand being persistent, trying to save some money, but I think this gets this uh, um, sets the example of what to avoid. This is my third oil cooler I have ordered since the last two ended up leaking. This one looks similar to all the others. I will note that the seals appeared better than the last one I installed. The only issue I had with this product is that the neck of the oil tube that has the O-ring around it was too thick. It wouldn't go down in the metal tube, so I had to do a good bit of sanding on it to get it to go in. It's in there tight, so we will see how things hold up. I'll check back and give an update if this one starts leaking. Update. Well, it lasted 8 months until I got that all too familiar transmission covered in mixture of coolant and oil. So for the fourth time, I took off the upper intake only to find a pool located all around the oil cooler. I won't put all the blame on the manufacturer, since Jeep did a terrible job designing this oil cooler, but how hard is it to make a plastic part that properly seals? I won't make the same mistake a fifth time. This time I will spend the extra cash and buy a Mopar version of this cooler.
Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, fool me 3 times, fool me 4th time. We ain't gonna be fooled again.
Fool me once. Shame on you. If fool me, we can't get fooled again.
I'm sure that was the 3.6 Pentastar. Yeah, when it comes to, like I said earlier, if it takes you 20 minutes to put this alternator on, fine. And you're doing it yourself, fine. Put the cheap one on it. That job's not necessarily hard, but
it takes about 3 hours.
Yeah, it's not a cakewalk.
Plus fluid, chemicals. I mean, you lose $40, $50 right there every time.
Yeah. So anyway, so there's some food for thought. That guy sounded like he knew what he was doing. Well, guys, that's going to wrap the episode up for today. Hopefully we earned a thumbs up from you. Let us know what you think down in the comment section. We have new content for you every single week, so consider subscribing to the channel. And with all that being said, thanks so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.
Welcome back to Automotive Insight. I'm Little Joe, and this is Little Goose. That was my funny. That was
Hi.